welcome back, all my galactic lovelies, to another exciting installment of Mind the Force podcast, a nerdy podcast about Star Wars and mental health. I am your number one illustrious host, Kristine McPartlin,
And I'm your Jedi Master, James Abbate.
and we, as always, are super excited. We're always excited. I don't think we're ever not excited because that's not fun for you guys. For a very special episode of Mind the Force, where we are celebrating our our second annual participation of Star Wars Podcast Day. Now, what is Star Wars Podcast Day, you guys may be asking? That is the anniversary arranged by Daniel at Star Wars Pod Day. Shout out to Daniel. It is the anniversary of the premiere of the first Star Wars podcast, as kind of how we think about podcasts today, as in an online platform where people talk. I don't know if there was video back then. I should find that out. And that was the premiere of the continually ongoing podcast called Jedi Talk. And they premiered on February 7th, 1999, a very long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And this is the 26th anniversary of said podcast premiere, and we are here to celebrate in camaraderie with, I think, over 100 other podcasts that also participate in it. And it was a fun thing that I did last year, and I really enjoyed it. So now I have pulled James onto the gravy train.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, and this is an amazing experience for me. Very free form too, which is good. So we can just kind of riff.
I know, I'm excited. Like we're just gonna talk about kind of our love of Star Wars in general and particularly why we feel that it's a good avenue through which to discuss mental health, which is the point of the podcast, if you haven't caught on to that yet. And yeah, no, it should just be a fun day. We don't get to have all these fun days. Not that every episode is not a fun day.
Yes, and I just wanted to, I guess, start off this one with a little anecdote that I said good afternoon or good morning to my Alexa today, and she said, "Good morning, James. What's the inside temperature of a tauntaun? Lukewarm." And I was very pleased. I was like, wow, the galaxy knows that today is the day for this recording. So also a little
Why
concerned the
is that
government just
funny?
may be listening because the odds of that are quite astronomical.
Why the fuck is that lukewarm? Why
Yeah,
is that so funny?
feel free to use that, kids. You could take it and let them know which podcast you got it.
Right? That you heard it here, people.
You heard it here for
Oh
the
my god,
first
that
time.
was great. That was great. Is there no there should be a book or at least like an Instagram page of like Star Wars themed dad jokes because that was prime. That
that
was
that Hosnian Prime, yes. No, but that actually probably is something Han Solo was telling. I like to think Kylo Ren in his early days. Like, oh,
right.
the time I rescued Luke back on Hoth,
Right? Right at the time Uncle Luke was about to get murked by that tauntaun.
or in the trenches in the Death Star. I'm sure Han
Right?
liked to explain that. How many times
I'm
he
sure
saved
there's
Luke's ass.
right, I'm sure there's a lot of I saved Uncle Luke's Jedi ass stories.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
And just Leia rolling her eyes in the corner and C3PO being like, that's not exactly how it happened, and just being like, shut up.
Just like I wish I was on Alderaan.
I'm sure a lot of people wish they were on Alderaan.
Oh yeah. So I'll
Um,
let you kick off with the riffs.
yeah, no, we got as usual before we get into all the big business, we got the little business. To stay up to date on everything Mind the Force, please check us out in all the places. You got mindtheforce.com, you have Instagram, you have Facebook. For all the latest episodes, please follow, like, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms. The Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, the Pandora, the Amazon, the iHeartRadio when it stops giving me problems. We are definitely on YouTube. You will see our glorious faces on YouTube. Pocket Cast, Castbox. Go hit the link in the bio. You'll find all the clickables. It'll be a good time. Just go and do it. Um, And as always, shoot us 5 stars because that's how we tell the internet we're cool. And for all your big Star Wars thoughts and feels, please hit us up at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com for all the love and all the smoke. We are here for it, as always. Last but certainly never least, our friendly content spoiler warning. Mind the Force podcast is a retrospective on Star Wars characters across all Star Wars content. All films, TV shows, novels, books, and video games are up for discussion. If you don't want some currently released aspect of Star Wars content to be spoiled, you know the drill. Turn around now.
Adios.
but not quite yet.
Yes, but come back in the future after you've watched everything.
Exactly, like leave and then come back because you don't want to miss it because like you'll miss us, you'll be sad. Don't be sad.
Right, and it's an empty void. You don't want to be mind the forceless. It's not fun. Trust us.
You don't want to be mind the forceless. That's damn straight you don't. I mean, I think we should just dive right into it.
Sure.
Yeah. So James, what this will be a nice broad shot out here. What do you love best about Star Wars? Kind of what? I guess besides the fact that I asked you to do this podcast with me, which is the best part of your life. Like what? Because I know that like we came in 2 different places. Like you had it strike as a child, and I had it strike as an adult, which I think is 2 very like fun sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, for sure. It's I guess I grew up with it around when I was like 6 or 7. I was trying to get the episode order straight with my dad because I didn't understand in medias res. I was like 4, 5, 6. He's like New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi. And I was like, okay. So it's hard for me to remember. I was like 4, 5, 6. As a kid, I'm like, what happened in 1, 2, 3? I watched the special editions on VHS. So honestly, I know that's blasphemy for some. Those are the ones I first knew. I actually don't think I've actually ever seen the non-special ones. Also, sorry if I'm alienating people, but I liked the what I first saw because that's what I knew, and then I jumped into episode 1, Phantom Menace, in theaters, and then from there I've just been a Star Wars head. But what I love most about Star Wars is I think the possibilities. Really, maybe that's a tried answer, but it's just that it's so broad, the galaxy, that it's the ultimate melting pot. Anything can happen. You put like a Tauntaun and a Wookiee, in a gladiator pit. Let's see what happens. It's just really like you see the different cultures, the ideologies, but I also like the religiosity. Honestly, how the Force does penetrate all. It's like a little hidden secret trick, and people from like the outer rim to the inner can have that same knowledge, even though they're light years and light years apart. And that everyone speaks pretty much the common tongue, regardless. So I really that I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of, but really, I just like that the sky's the limit, literally in Star Wars. That's my favorite thing. What about you? Same question.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, as our listeners well know, I am late to the Star Wars party, and I watched pretty much all the movies in 2020, and then took way longer than I should have watching Clone Wars, considering it's now my favorite thing. And I think what really struck me was, aside from just being a world, I definitely agree with what you said about like just the sky's the limit. I like a world building. I like a galaxy. I like the options and the different stories. You can come at it from so many different angles. But I think what really struck me was I think what really hit me was like analyzing the Jedi and just seeing this like really like problematic orthodox religion and just being like, that's interesting. And just for me it just kind of spiraled from there, like with all like the larger themes like around war and around like emotional connection and around religion and around politics, and like it just spiraled and spiraled. But I definitely think it was Anakin's relationship within this like very strict religion that really caught my attention. Because I grew up in kind of like a bit of like a strange religious situation. Not a textbook cult, but like enough that um that I have I guess, very strong opinions on religion. And so I guess like it just made me look at the Jedi like I've never sat here and been like, oh my god, the Jedi are wonderful. Like from the jump, I was like, the Jedi are problematic. Ooh,
Their
isn't
narrow
that
dogmatic
interesting?
view. Yeah.
Right? I'm like, isn't that interesting? Like,
It is too,
and
and that
so
led to the fall of the empire. I'm sorry, the fall of the republic in a
right?
way. They let their guard
Right?
down.
Like the hubris of it. Like just thinking like this is, I mean, not to quote a whole different orthodox situation, but this is the way. Like
This is the way.
this is the way. And just I don't know, like it was so like one-sided, and then you're like seeing like Palpatine play it from the other side, like, and then it's just like all these factions and it's like all happening right in front of their faces, and I'm like, don't you see what's going on? I'm like I'm having a William Shatner moment. Like, don't you guys see what's going on here? And it's but it was still so vast and so interesting, and like there's so many like moving pieces, and I just loved that. And then like I think that's what's really kept me going through the fandom, as like I then got into the shows and I got into the books and I got into the comics, that I'm like it's just this endless, and like I know for some people I can feel daunting, but for me it just feels like thrilling, that there's really just no end to it, that you could go on like forever and ever. And I know obviously there's a finite amount of stuff, but there's a shitload of it. And I just love that. I love that like I can like my cup can never be full.
Right. It does keep on going and across the different media.
Yeah, and like that's what I love. Like there's no shortage of stories, there's no shortage of perspectives and worlds. And like as much as like I love the Skywalker saga, and like there's so much like richness in it, so many different players with their hand in the pot, I also love when we get outside of that and we get to see other stories and other people and other things. Um it's just
Skeleton
it's
Crew,
just
yeah.
right, like it's just though I heard a theory about Skeleton Crew I really enjoyed, that like the hidden planets were like a part of something with Palpatine. Like something with like his like contingency plan. I wish I could remember because it's like a comic thing. It's like a deep lore comic
Right,
thing.
his long game.
Um yeah, that it was like all the hidden planets were like part of some sort of contingency plan, where if like, oh, if I go out and like these planets are going with me, or like he hid something there in regards to like his Sith power, or I wish I'd written it down because it was a really cool theory. And I'm like, and so like obviously everything comes back to the Skywalker saga, because why
Right.
wouldn't it? Um,
Well, Filoni will cover all that in his movie, I'm sure. He'll if there is a
exactly.
theory, he'll do it.
It was a really good source of retconning that could like bring Skeleton Crew into the bigger story. That's why like I'm not gunning for a second season, because I think it was a very nice season by itself. But if they did and it worked,
I think they'll just tie all those New Republic shows, including Skeleton Crew, which Filoni didn't really have a heavy hand in at all, but I think
yeah,
just because of the setting and the IP, they'll do it. So we'll see.
right?
Ahsoka has a second season, right? It was confirmed, or did I dream that?
Yeah, yeah. They're
Okay.
coming out with a second season. I doubt they'll do. I mean, I know they're all going to converge in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. So I know there's no more Mandalorian. There's probably no more Boba Fett, because why
Wait,
would
there's
there
there's
be?
no there's no season 4 of Mandalorian? That was
No, it's gonna be the movie.
so 3 was the end of the series. I didn't know that. With
Yeah, the movie's
with the
gonna be the end of
Moth's
the series.
demise, right?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
movie
so I
finale.
know
Wow.
yeah, I know that Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett, and I'm forgetting the last
Skeleton
one.
Crew and
And
Andor.
maybe or maybe not Skeleton Crew. No, Andor's just gonna end with season 2. I don't think
Right.
that's going to
Oh,
overlap.
well,
Because also that's
oh,
before.
I'm just talking about the series. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, for the movie. Yeah. I actually don't know. I don't always read too much ahead except for the comics. I like to know what's coming out here. But for the movies and TVs, I like to be a little surprised, honestly. I hear the
Mhm.
announcements obviously when they're big, but
Mhm.
generally speaking, I like to just kind of see it when it's about to arrive and just hop in. Like, great, I don't have to wait for it, because now it's just here.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, James, somebody has to do research for this podcast
Yep.
and make sure that we're not covering characters that are going to have a big story arc
Right.
thrown into it.
Right, because 'cause we're mostly covering
Um,
people who are kind of done. For instance, if we were to do someone like, Windu or Kiadi-Mundi, they're dead and very unlikely to have
yeah,
a Force Ghost TV show, you know?
right? Though I'm in the camp that hopes Windu's alive.
Yeah,
I'm in that camp
he fell
that
into a
I think
taxi.
fell into attack. I mean, he
Of
wasn't
course.
like a low ball Jedi master. Like he was
No.
second to Yoda, and Yoda would
He
have survived being thrown out that
It
window.
was just a little electric shock, which he was already honestly getting hit with. He got a little blasted out before. That one did
Right?
pry him a little, but he is the strongest, and if Anakin can land in another car, in episode 2, I don't see why Mace couldn't. He just
Right?
needs one good hand, yeah.
Right? I think it was very like and it's like one of those rules, unless you saw someone die, don't believe they're dead. So, I'm of the camp that Windu's alive.
Well, look
I'd
at it.
stand on that soapbox.
Maybe Windu's the chosen one, because the Force lightning that got him ended up killing Anakin, that little twerp that Mace hated in the end. So maybe the chosen one is really
Maybe.
Mace Windu.
Maybe.
He killed the Sith who killed the Sith, yeah.
See,
Revenge, also.
that's the kind of theory that's gonna get us some email smoke that they
Eh
never send.
well, it was karmic because they both fell down shafts as Robot Chicken shows, you know? Well,
Right?
not shafts, I
Right?
guess,
And
like, just a long, yeah,
right?
cavern.
Exactly. If Maul can survive it, Windu can
Mhm.
survive it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. What
Mhm.
they I forget in Clone Wars, I know he said he fell and was left for dead. How was his fall, like, I guess,
I mean, I
cushion?
guess, like, his legs were broke. I mean, like, just think about the state you found him in at the bottom of that crevice.
Yeah,
I mean, his legs were obviously broken, so he had to, like, build those robot legs.
yeah. But how did his
Um,
head not, like, just get crushed from the impact? I always want maybe it was a night he fell on the
maybe
janitor.
maybe it's a Sabrak thing. The
Mhm.
horns
The
broke
spale
as
horn,
well.
right, that's what they're
Or the
for.
Force. Like,
That's true too,
you
right?
right, you would think well, actually, no, his legs weren't broken, he got cut in half. Sorry.
Right, well, that's so that I would say,
Sorry.
"Hey, doctor, they're still they're not
There's
working too great."
still a problem here, still an issue.
Well, that's the thing,
Um,
unless you see a Jedi or a Sith actually die, don't assume, right? You wanna see them explode or join the
mhm,
Force, and if
right.
that didn't happen.
Well well, I mean, even the same thing, I'm wondering how they're gonna retcon, um, Ventress,
Right,
because
the novel.
because Dark Disciple is canon, and it's like, well, she died, but I saw her come back in Bad Batch, so how does
Yeah,
that
that
work?
was I immediately Wikipedia'd that when I saw it, I was like, "Wait a
Yeah.
tick,
I mean,
wait a
which I'm
tick."
100% confident that Filoni's got that covered, and it's gonna
Right.
be
But
chef's kiss. I
but
have
it
no
kinda
doubt.
to me, that just kinda undid the Romeo Juliet aspect of, Star-Crossed Lovers of, Dark Disciple, which I really loved. I think
I
it's like a
love Dark
you
Disciple.
you you
It's
could just
so
give it to
good.
someone who doesn't even know Star Wars in 50 years from the future.
Right? And it's
Just
just
give
like this
them, they'll
beautiful
still get it.
thing. And like and it would be a shame to not understand Ventress's character better. Like not having like if you haven't seen Clone Wars, like if you wanted to read the book, I'd be like, "Ah, you should go get to know her a little bit because she is amazing." But like it's still a beautiful story. Like just enemies to lovers, star-crossed situation, like
I'm just so disappointed they didn't, originally finish that season 7 of Clone Wars because that would've been a story along with the Kyber
yeah,
crystals and all that, but you know what?
yeah,
They did what they did, and there is the media like, this Darth Maul comic, so it's there, but, you know, it just, I get you
yeah,
can't worry about what it shoulda, coulda, but that does
yeah,
go well into psychology, though, because I thought that was a really good book showing those 2 different, more dark side, more light side, and how they switched over. Not only switched sides of the Force, but kinda switch perspectives and psychologies as well. Maybe we'll do a Quinlan Vos Asajj Ventress episode in the future, but just to tie psychology into this, I thought as Star Wars progressed, especially from the Lucas era ones into the later ones, but really more in the prequels, I would say not so much in the original trilogy, you saw the lines between good and evil blur and become more
yeah.
gray. They were more stark in the first 3 movies and those Legends, media, but then come the prequels into the Disney era, things got more complicated, and which some that turned some fans off. I appreciated. I think it could be handled clumsily sometimes, but other times handled really deftly. So, what are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree, and I think that's what I loved about I mean, the overall story in general as a whole. I do agree that the original trilogy, it's very black and white. It's an old school space western. opera,
Mhm.
of like good versus evil, hero versus villain, as we've talked about before. I mean, I love story nuance. I don't really want to see a one-dimensional character. Like, I want everyone to make me think a little bit. Like, I want to see the hero do some like morally questionable things. Like, I want the villain to kind of be relatable, where
Mm.
you're like, I understand how you went down this path. Like, I understand like why, as you can see by my chosen name today, I understand why someone would choose to follow the path of the dark side and be like attracted to that kind of power and that kind of control,
Mhm.
especially in such a chaotic galaxy.
Especially when the
Um,
Jedi failed you too, you know?
especially when the Jedi failed you, like especially
Mhm.
when you can see like the hypocrisy laid out so clearly. Like I even loved that in it's in everybody's favorite show, The Acolyte. I love that they
I liked
touched on
it.
that. I could have watched an entire season of that sender ripping in ripping into row and just being like, you're all fucking crazy if
I
you
just
think that what you're doing is okay.
I was intrigued by the limits of the psychology there because it didn't fall within the Star Wars general, like, window, the Overton window. It was extended for that, and that was a lot of fans' problems. For me, I don't know, maybe I set the bar low for a lot of things in life, in terms of art, I should say, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I just take it for what it is. If it's a bad movie, a bad series, I just enjoy it. I'm like, "Alright," as long as it's not boring. If it's boring, then I'm like, "You're trying my patience," but if it's still has some entertainment value, I try to look at what they're doing, whether it's production elements, you
Yeah.
know, or the story they're trying to tell, maybe they're not doing it so well. I'm like, "Here's what they should have done." I just thought one thing that was funny in The Acolyte when she just goes like, "Ah," and then they attack her, and she's like, "Why did you do that?" He's like, "Well, you just turned into a very freaky, like, demon-like creature. Forgive my, reflex there." That to me was a little funny, but other than
Yeah.
that, like, I enjoyed and now they're doing it in the comics in the Battle of Jakku with
Mm,
Adelhard. They tied in the acolytes of the beyond, and they're actually a major
mm.
subplot. So clearly they made that comic before it got canceled, but I like that it did kind of infuse into the overall, story planning for the
Yeah.
galaxy.
Well, I think it's all important. I think that people who like, yeah, there were things I didn't love about The Acolyte all the time, of course. Like, it was not a perfect thing. To quote a very good friend of mine, sometimes things can just be okay, and that's
And
fine.
that's fine. And
Not
that's
not
fine.
not everything has to be like, "Oh my god, this is amazing," or "Oh my god, this fucking sucks." Like,
Sometimes you just want Taco Bell. Yeah.
it can sometimes you just want Taco Bell, right? Bro, I want some Taco Bell. Um I'm just hungry all the time now. That's
Hey,
that's
yep.
my
Yep, that's your
that's
MO.
the that's that's my MO now. I mean, there were things that were great about that storyline. There were things that didn't work. There were things that like maybe like production wise I would have changed, but the stories were there. The stories were rich. Oh my god, like how the lore connected with like what Plagueis was doing.
Yes.
Like, people were
Right,
like, "Oh, it
his
didn't
mhm.
make any sense," or it negated, like, Anakin's, like, immaculate conception, which, I mean, isn't what immaculate conception is, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Um, but I'm like, "No, it actually fits in
It
perfectly,"
right, it fits
because
in
it wasn't like they knew what they were doing when they made Anakin, like, it was shooting around in the dark, playing with midichlorians and meditating, and so, it was like, "Oh my god,
mhm.
here's this other use of the Force by this completely different species of witches on a virgin's planet that made life. Like,
To me, they also fit within the lore of the Witches of Dathomir. Once that was introduced, I believe what Clone Wars for the first time. I could be wrong. Sorry, fans, but I think that really showed the expansion of magic per se, or religion, or force, depending how you look at it in the
yeah.
galaxy. But it
L
applied to acolytes just in a previous century,
yeah,
and
like
in a
the
different
Force
substructure. Mhm,
yeah, like the Force applied like the Force was everywhere. Like, they covered that in Clone Wars, they covered that in Rebels, like,
mhm.
that the Jedi did not have, like, a monopoly on the Force.
Right.
The Force is everywhere and everything.
It's just take it easy. I get some people's concerns. You don't wanna ruin the IP or deviate too much in any case. I get that. You don't wanna water things down, but at this point, you also have to accept it's been franchised. Disney owns it, like, hello. That ship has sailed at this point. So either you get over the psychological block that's forcing you to not enjoy it. If you don't like it, you don't have to, but I don't think you have to be so vitriolic, honestly, in my opinion. But you also don't have to like it either. That's fair.
Yeah.
And you enjoy the content that you
And
do, and if you
that's
don't, then you go watch stuff you like that was in the past.
exactly, exactly, it's fine, like, I don't think it ruined any of the lore. I
No.
think it added to it so nicely, and come on, the lightsaber battles were, like, really fucking great.
Yeah, yeah, I think some of the best lightsaber fights were duels that were in that, and a lot of it has to do with the technology too. A lot of it's
Right?
just, you know.
It's literally the kind of Star Wars that, like, Lucas always wanted to make. Like, even with the sequel trilogy, which I can admit has lots of plot holes. I think the original trilogy has lots of plot holes.
Yeah, they all
Take
do.
that, nerds. Um, but visually, like, cinematically, like, those 3 sequel movies are stunning. Like, if you just watched them on mute and didn't follow what was going on, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, they're the most it's the lighting, yeah, for sure, they really mastered the shadow play too, the
Yeah, like,
impact. There was a heavier thud to it, whereas Lucasfilms were a little more playful and bouncy. I don't know if
yeah.
you know, there's more of staccato in the newer movies, you know, very
I
thud, you
I
know?
can get that, but, like, the scenes, the battle shots,
Mhm.
like, just everything was beautiful. Like, if you just watch it just for visuals, like, you're not disappointed at all. I mean, storyline-wise, it's alright, it wasn't great, but, like
They should have planned ahead, that was my thing. Just plan
yeah,
ahead.
no, that's it's you know what? It was too many hands in the pot,
Right, too
but
many cooks.
I digress.
Too many Dexes in the kitchen, yeah. Gotta
There
make
you
it
go,
real.
there you
Well
go.
you brought up an interesting point, if I may digress a little bit, because you mentioned about the religion and, you know, the fall of the Jedi, you know, the Old Republic, but in the grand scheme of things, that's why I'm still Jedi, not Sith, because the Sith only ruled for a good 23 years, I believe, but in the end, the religion came back, you know, the Jedi, but they needed a reformation, like with these, the Catholic and King not the King James, but the Protestant, the ESV.
Mhm.
It needed a rebirth, as you see with the Lutherans too in the 1500s, especially. You know, there was that great schism, the Reformation in England, you know, Germany, everywhere, because they're like, is this the true religion? And I think that Lucas was keenly aware of that, especially in the prequel trilogy. They're like these dogmatic customs, or even with the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's like these are just, you're just following the book, but forgetting what it's all about. The Force is about love, man, you know? And I think, and Mace Windu was honestly the most stark contrast of that rigidity, you know? He was like, "We will stay within the lines." Yoda's like, "Sometimes you can," you know? And Yoda sensed it too. He's like, "Part of this is us." And you could see his guilt in the later days, like, "We weren't
Oh,
practicing this
yeah.
correctly." And he knows that. He's like, "We did I let pride get to me. That's why all these people died." And
Yeah.
that to me is the deep underlying current in this. But him and Obi-Wan have faith in the end because it's like, okay, all the bells and whistles of like the Catholic Church, for instance, fell apart, but we are still followers and we will just bring it into a new era. Now that had issues in the new trilogy, but I still think that Reformation kind of like mentality definitely informed the overall spirituality of Star Wars. I think a lot of that is kind of like a Protestant revival. Uh, that's just
I
how
can
I dissect it.
I can see that. I can see that, especially as a follower of the Sith doctrines, that essentially like the messaging got skewed. Like I think when you're looking at like what Plagueis was teaching Sidious, I think it got so skewed with Sidious that he just like went off the rails and like ruined it for everybody. Like somebody like interpreting the Bible in like a crazy extremist way, where it's just like,
Mhm.
I think you're overshooting your shot here,
Right,
bro.
you're
I don't think
overshooting.
this is what you're trying to do. And really just lost that train of thought and like didn't see the benefits of like passing on his knowledge. He's like, no, like I need to be the one. Like it just like religion and narcissism don't really go together.
Well, Anakin was kind of an inverted Jesus too, you know, in a sense, as the chosen one. I thought that, and he obviously played a big deal in that. But it was interesting, like when Jesus goes through the darkness the night before his
Mhm.
crucifixion, and he's kind of lost. Anakin reaches out and grabs that fruit. The difference is Anakin delays his salvation of, you know, the galaxy, for instance, by
Yeah.
a few decades because he does shake hands with the devil. He does meet him halfway, whereas Christ rejected that night but was tempted. But I think that was interesting because you don't want Anakin following just a strictly biblical narrative. It would be it's been done before, you know. what I
Yeah.
like about Star Wars was it inverted that role and see like what happens if Christ got down off the cross. Like that's a good Scorsese movie, Last Temptation of
Ooh.
Christ. Catholics routed that one though. But yeah, it was that's what's so interesting about to me Star Wars. Just getting applying that to the real world and deepening our thinking there.
Yeah. Well, I think this is to pull another one of my personal passions into things. I don't know if you've ever seen Jesus Christ Superstar, but I think what you're saying is that all Anakin needed to do was have a good song break, sing some Gethsemane,
Some just
and maybe he would have been a little more grounded in what he
may,
needed to do.
maybe if someone just sang with him more often after his mom passed. Yeah, I'm sure he had
Yep.
maybe
Padme
Padme.
should have Padme should have broken out into song with him,
She's
and
like, I'm pregnant.
maybe
Let C-3PO do this one.
right.
Yeah.
He's so good at singing, like C-3PO in his musical talent.
Well, he could change. I'm sure he can adopt voices, right? Do it in Padme's voice. It would get weird. I'm sure.
um but no, I completely agree. And I mean, that's another cool thing about like Star Wars inspiration. It's just like how deep they pull from their resources, like how deep like how deep like you find Christian references, how deep you find like references from like Judaism and from Buddhism. And
More Eastern,
it's
yeah.
yeah, right, like it's curious as we prepare eventually for some other like religious based episodes. Yeah, like you see so much Eastern religion in the Jedi, like whether it's fighting styles or it's their wardrobe choices, or even the style of the temple.
Which is great. That's what I think broke their minds, honestly, and contributed to the downfall of the Jedi in the Clone Wars. They're like, we're war generals now. This is not us. A lot of them were like, basically 4F. They were just like, no, I don't understand. We're not supposed to be doing that. And then basically the Jedi consensus, the official, consensus was like, well,
Yeah,
we have to just to protect, the peace, to be keepers of the peace. We have to be follow the law of the jungle and be war generals now. But they lost their identity and they're like, look at us. What are we
yeah.
doing here?
Though I
It broke their
think that
psyches.
is, though I think that speaks to a larger thematic theme. Ugh, excuse me, pregnancy burp. Um, And I think that speaks to a larger thematic theme because think about all the sources where it's like, oh, we are keepers of the peace. Like we're just trying to protect like the populace. And like I think of like Hunger Games where the peacekeepers were the ones that flew in on those hover ships and started fucking everybody up and would take away people for like the fucking games and just killing citizens and whatever. And they were keepers of the peace. I don't think I've ever seen a reference to a keeper of the peace that wasn't like secret police Gestapo style.
Right, and it's like, dude, you just cut that dude in half with a laser sword, and it's like, gotta do what you gotta do, But even the
Right? For
Buddhists
the
were like,
balance of the force. Like
well, the Buddhists were like, just kill us. Well, to be fair, there were violent Buddhists in life. When you look at the history, especially in India and China, like and Tibet and all that stuff, you can see the wars that went on among Hindus and Buddhists and Sikhs and all that stuff. And
they're
a
still
lot of
going
that
on.
was the and even in the Abrahamic religions, a lot of it, depending how you look at it, is righteous war, and that's an element within religion which informs ethics and informs government, which informs art, steps removed. So
Yep.
I think Star Wars got that obviously from history, and they're like, okay, we're dealing with these complex issues, even in the original trilogy. Like, how do we reconcile X with Y to, like what is our net goal? What is to save how many planets? If we gotta like, war ravage one, or X amount, So I think that as that tied in, it broke so many minds, and since there's so many minds in the galaxy, you could see how each one dealt with it individually, whether it's discarded
Hmm.
clones in the Bad Batch, a clone orphan like Boba Fett, or Anakin, the Immaculate One. Everyone is from a different walk of life, and to tie that into what we were saying earlier, like the possibilities are just endless. So we're kind of getting psyches that wouldn't necessarily exist in our reality, Like
Yeah.
we don't have any clones that I know of. Do you know any clone friends? You only get that from Star
No,
Wars.
not quite. I have a few twin friends. I think it's a little weird, but it's cool.
Right, right. But
Um,
imagine that, like having an army of them.
right.
You'd be a little like, this isn't normal. I would get used to it, but what are they thinking?
Right. Right. And it's interesting that like you bring up the point of like people's different perspectives in the galaxy, like in regards to what the Jedi were doing in regards to like the Clone Wars and people's reactions. Because I feel like Star Wars did such a nice job of like walking that line of like strong religious comparisons and like strong orthodox comparisons without like shoving it down your throat, because it's never, because it's always like, oh, this in the name of peace, this in the name of democracy, this in the name of the republic. It's never like what really happens in real life and has happened through history, where this is in like the name of my god.
Right, right.
And
Right.
um
Because the
yeah,
Force
no,
is,
and
like,
it
bodiless or incorporeal.
exactly.
It's not a it doesn't have a form as even the formless,
Exactly, but it still
Christian God
feels
does.
like, exactly, but it still feels like a more tangible thing than
'Cause they
God,
use
if that makes sense,
because it
like,
operates before your eyes. You could see the miracle. Everyone is like a Jesus figure or a Christian
right?
figure in the sense that they can move objects or be attuned to things. So it has real to me, if I saw that, I would be okay. This is science almost. If it's this
Exactly, like,
religion exists.
it's
Yeah.
like, it feels more science and more energy than just, like, general religious belief, but it's still something that you have to believe in, but, I mean, science is also a
But
belief.
right, well, people point to that to a lesser degree here, and then you could say, like Thomas Aquinas especially proves God through natural law and reason. You could say you can get there by just seeing the fact that we exist almost, and that everything has to have a beginning. The unmoved mover sort of argument within Star Wars. Those you don't need those arguments because you could see it before your eyes, unless they're all magic tricks. I'm like, he just moved a planet
Yeah,
with his hands. I believe I'm not going to be a non-believer because I just saw what he did. It's insane to me that more people that not everyone's a Jedi or a Sith, that there should be 2
yeah.
Sith and everyone else Jedi because it's clear before your eyes, which was interesting about A New Hope. Everyone's like, "Those Jedi." I don't remember what 19 years ago. I don't remember that at all. Who?
"What is Jedi?
What
What?" Like,
Jedi? They just ran the government from Coruscant, from the capital, but I
right?
don't remember any of those people.
Right, they were literally a body
It's
of
the
government.
Force, but that shows you the power of propaganda in the state when
Yeah.
Stalin asked
Well,
Papa Palpatine came in like,
Papa Pump.
nope,
There's
nope,
a tongue twister. Well,
rewrite the
that's also
books.
what's interesting about. I think like the span of the galaxy, I think can really represent like the span of the world, like pre-technological revolution,
Hmm.
evolution. You know what I mean? Like
Revolution, yeah.
well,
Mhm.
yeah, when like technology, like within the 21st century, 20th and 21st century, made the world a lot smaller. Like think about how big the world used to be. You'd have to send ships across the world to get anything or get any kind of news, like, but things like obviously like the radio and the telephone and like the internet like all like blew that out of the water. But think about that being like the galaxy. Like think about fucking Coruscant's up here in the inner rim and you're in fucking Tatooine or Iriadu like down here on the outer rim, like you're not really giving a fuck about what's going on up here. And it's that same kind of thing where okay, we can kind of run our own show out here. Like that's why you have
Yeah,
like all the
gangsters,
fucking, yeah, that's why you have all the gangsters. You have the fucking huts that like run the
spice
outer
runners, and yep,
rim.
mhm.
Because like no one gives a fuck what's going on up here in DC. Like or in like whatever fucking like body of government you have. It just doesn't touch us. Like one, we're not their main concern because let's be honest, like it's even a modern day problem. That bodies of government just kind of worry about their immediate surroundings. Like even our own government, without getting too political on our own podcast, didn't worry enough about middle America, and then they came out in droves and said some stuff, and now we're in the situation we're in now because we were so focused on the coast. Like,
Mhm. Right, you need to well, the thing is with us too, we're very big and diverse. We are a very unique situation, like, if even though we don't have near the size or the population of, like, China or India, it's just, we're a confederation almost, and the way we balance states versus federal, which we're still always kind of playing that out in the body politic every day, really. Our identity is not as fine-tuned, so that creates a lot
mhm,
more room for, conflict. It's hard to unify, but we're still here, that's the good thing, we
right?
could
We are
always mess
still
this up,
here.
but well
Any minute
yeah,
now, we can mess it
yeah,
up.
any
Like,
minute and yeah, that's even reading, like, I'm reading a Khrushchev biography, just him and JFK duking it out, like, they had they had the Cuban Missile Crisis, we had the Bay of Pigs, we were just pissing each other off, 2 guys were just pissing each other off, coulda ended and everyone was my dad was like, "We would get under the desk, and they'd be, up. Okay, this will protect us from the A-bomb."
right? That
Uh
that desk is gonna stop every. The desk is gonna be coming in the fucking clutch.
we be right, it'll be clutch, and we could read all the books like that Twilight Zone episode. "Oh, I'm time enough at last. Thank God everyone's dead and I can read, so I can learn to become better on my own." But that's that. honestly, since Oppenheimer, really, we've been in a Cold War since. The technology exists, so we all have Death Stars, and
Yeah,
that's the crazy part when we think about plagues, bombs, starvation. We rely on the grid. Any of this can go wrong from country to country
yeah,
internationally. So Star Wars, we're a microcosm, honestly. Star Wars
yeah.
is on a grand scale, you know.
Yeah, no, it's and that's kind of like my, I guess the thought comparison is like we're supposed to be like this like tiny version of like the larger galaxy where it's like every little almost every little town is like a planet. Like every like state or every region is like its own planet with its own customs and own beliefs. It's just now we're all so connected. Like so we
Right.
can all watch Star Wars.
Right, like, imagining, like, when the world was that small, like, in the ancient day, like, a Mesopotamian Egypt, or even when Paul was, spreading the Gospels, like, "Hey, Corinth, hey, Rome, got this gospel thing, I don't really gotta go over there, right? You could just I'm sending you a text."
No,
Back
you
then, that what
better start walking, bitch.
well,
Better start walking.
they said, "Go to the ends of the earth." For them, it was just that Mediterranean area, for the most part, Asia Minor and all that stuff, so and
Right?
the Near East, but now today, look at it, what we are,
Exactly, like
and
what we're able to do. Like my coworker took a cruise to Antarctica.
really? Oh, I was looking into those actually.
You
I
can
wanna do
do
that
those. She
one day.
said
That's
she
the way
said
to
it's
go.
very she said it's very cool. It's cold and like you like learn a lot and you know what for me it's she said like the rocking of the boat to get there was insane and I was like, "Yeah, see that would stop me because I get motion sick." I hope to get there one day because that would be cool.
I mean, I'll go with you. We'll go freeze our asses off
Right?
and find a
We'll
nice
record
warm
a
taunt.
pod.
It's lukewarm. Tauntaun.
So
Yeah,
I'm making that joke.
we'll tauntaun everyone on the boat with it, yeah.
Well,
Well,
shut up.
we could we can edit these out or we'll keep them. We'll find out. It'll be a nice little surprise. But,
Ah, come on, and deny Matt the pleasure of
it
our random banter. Like,
just press the button, destroy the joke. Um, but anyway, when you brought something up interestingly, the mafia element, like with the organized crime, the huts. That would be an interesting element for Star Wars to go, like Penguin did with Sopranos. Do like a Jabba Sopranos, like Jabba's just
that would
driving
be
into his
cool.
palace, on a little
That would be cool.
speeder
Well, I mean, they had so much success
with
with the
Boba,
Bounty Hunter comic series
right? Or
that
the
it's
Boba
just
Fett
like,
series a little bit.
yeah, like we want to see what
The
the naughty boys are
outlaws
up
and
to, like,
ruffians, yeah, it's the Wild
right,
West, yeah, and
right,
originally it was a Western, sort of, space Western, so that
right,
is its roots, that is Star Wars roots, the
yeah,
outlaws. Han Solo is kind of the earliest form of that because he was criminal turned hero. He's beyond
yeah,
any hero, he's hero,
yeah.
so, um
Um, yeah, no, and I think that was supposed to be the premise. Sorry. Oh, I'm not bored. I'm pregnant and tired. Yeah, no, that I mean that was supposed to be the premise, I think, of the Darth Maul movie. Was when he was the leader, I want to say of the Black Sun.
yes,
Um,
the Syndicate, mhm.
yeah, that was supposed yeah, thank you, the Black Sun Syndicate. That was supposed to be the premise of that. Was him like being this like underworld overlord, which I was here
It's
for.
so cool
Like,
with the
but you,
Force, yeah.
you know what I realized yesterday though? um par- Particularly speaking about my love of our main man Darth Maul, it's that like I wouldn't be mad, and stay with me here, if the Darth Maul like movie or series, preferably series because I prefer series, was like in the Clone Wars animation. Because it was Clone War, it was like animated Darth Maul that I like just became obsessed with, and I'm like, I just want to see his animated face, and Sam Witwer has to voice because who else would? And I want to see all of that action, all that story in the Clone Wars 2D animation. Like I don't know if I need it live action. It's not the same.
Well, best episodes were Maul episodes. I love those.
A hundred
Just
percent.
because he matured too as a character, super, and he was fighting against the tide really. So I kind of like that loner element. He was very. It's kind of like Westworld. He was the Man in Black. I really just liked his uh little schemes because every time though it was a dad issue. He went back to dad. He's like, "Love me, I hate you, love me," and then it'd just be whipped
Mm.
aside. He'd be like, "Why?"
Just rife with adoption complex issues. Just
Not so
like
tough now. Yeah.
right. Like, I one of the best like, there's so much about Maul to learn. Every time I learn more things about Maul, it just adds to this, like, amazing rich story, and I'm like, "I love him so much. He's so damaged." Like, talk about a toxic relationship. Me and Maul have a very toxic relationship.
I fell in love. He got me into Star Wars because that was the first real big lightsaber battle I saw on screen, Phantom Menace,
Right?
so
I can
Ray
imagine as
Park
a
killed it.
kid, that was so cool.
Ray Park is like he made that movie, like, without his acrobatics,
Yeah.
it would've been very difficult to replicate. He did Toad too in X-Men, like, I would love he's old. I follow him
Ooh,
on
I didn't
Instagram. He's
know he
older, but he
ooh, I
could
didn't
still
know he did Toad. That's cool.
he did Toad, yeah, he could he's a jumper. He's a jumper
Oh
and a
my
hopper.
gosh, he's so like, you ever seen, like, his, like, extra like, not exercise, but, like, saber battle videos
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Instagram? Oh my god, they're so cool. It's like, "Oh, you does this, man.
Yeah, I'm like,
Respect."
you will be healthier and more acrobatic at 70 than I was at, like, 25, like
Facts. Big facts.
well, let's get because we're probably just gonna do an hour here, so, what would you, like, discuss in terms of, like, any psych-related elements, any other elements of Star Wars that tickle
Oh
your fancy?
gosh. I mean, there's so much. There's so much. I mean, which is even how, like, the pod kinda came to be that I just found myself just poring over all these, like, heavy thematic themes, and I'm like and it just made me, like, think about my own life so much. Like, I even, like, the interpersonal relationships, like, I looked at I mean, especially with Anakin, obviously, like, the deep dives that have been done on Anakin on this show are very profound, but one that I always love coming back to, aside from all of, like, the, like, mommy trauma issues surrounding, like, Shmi and Padme and that whole thing, is him and Ahsoka.
Hmm.
Just the amount of character development they got to do in Clone Wars, like, not Ahsoka not even just Ahsoka as an individual character, but their relationship and what that meant to the larger story, I thought was just so brilliant. Like, by the time everything's going downhill for Ahsoka with the Jedi when, like, she's being framed and she's being hunted and, like, Anakin's just on her side, but it's, like, forcing him further down the path of the dark side, and then she leaves, and, like, you just see his heart break, and it's just like,
Another one.
another one.
Yeah, that's
Like,
you hear that.
just like another heartbreak, like how like and you watch it how his heart broke with his mom and how his heart broke with Qui-Gon and then the next one in canon line is how his heart breaks with Ahsoka and it's fucking tragic. And it's fucking tragic because you also know the tragedy that's coming. Like we get that like foresight as the audience to know like you don't even know heartbreak, sir. Like it's a coming. It's a coming for you. But just to see this come in this really unexpected way, I think, like, people who just haven't watched Clone Wars are just missing out on this, like, beautiful character development, and it just made me think of, like, those chosen family relationships that we choose or not even choose because I think they were, like, kind of, like, thrust upon each other, they were kind of forced together, um, when I think Ahsoka was 14 and, like, Anakin was 19. And so you're already both very, like, emotionally stunted just from being young, and now you're essentially being, like, having the sibling forced upon you. You're going through the traumas of war, and, like, your, like, leader is in war, and you can barely lead yourselves because you're children. But just the bond that they ended up forming, like, this, like, love that they ended up forming, and just for then Ahsoka to have to make that very, like, necessary, selfish, like but necessary, like, sometimes like, selfish things are needed, um, to have to make that choice of, like, "I need to leave all this behind," and unfortunately, that means leaving you behind, and, like, I think, like, that I guess you could, like, mark Shmi dying as the beginning of the end. I think Ahsoka leaving was the beginning of the end. I don't
Yeah.
think he came back
Mhm.
from that.
Because look how easily he was able like, 3 times he fought Obi-Wan and was willing to kill him. He had no didn't pull any punches, so I think that end of Clone Wars, that was his last human moment, really, you know, eh, generally speaking. The biggest redemption arc in my heart was Ahsoka, because when I first saw the Clone Wars movie, I hated it. I just thought it was a Christmas special. I did not like Ahsoka. I thought she
Yeah.
was so annoying. I'm like, "Snips, what is this?" But then as I watched the series, I'm like, "Okay, now here's the character development." I'm like, "I kinda wish they started with the series." And I hope no one ever starts with the movie. and but then goes
Right,
back to it.
right,
Yeah,
the movie's not necessary. I saw
right.
the movie, like, way after I finished the series,
Just
and I was like, "Oh,
do a little
okay."
YouTube video, their first meeting. Okay, that's that. That's all you need to know.
Right, you don't need to watch the you only need to watch the whole thing to watch them meet and to watch that, like,
Mhm.
cheeky banter with Obi-Wan at the end when he, like, distracts.
Mhm,
I don't even
yeah,
remember who he distracts, but it was really funny.
the
But yeah, no,
separatist. Mhm.
movie's unnecessary. But yeah, no, I mean, just beautiful character development. I was just telling my actually, and this is a very standard old school Star Wars fan thing, and I don't hate them for it, but I hope they come to the light. I was just telling my father-in-law 2 weeks ago, who apparently is a big Star Wars fan, and I was like, "Go off, father-in-law, that's great." And he was watching Ahsoka. He was watching the live action series, and he was really enjoying it. And I was like, "That's awesome. I didn't even know you were like into Star Wars like that. That's great." And I told him, like, "Have you ever watched Clone Wars?" And he was like, "No, I don't need to watch a cartoon." And I was like, "Stop right there, sir. Stop right there. You absolutely need to watch this cartoon because it's the best Star Wars content there is."
Some of my
Like
friends too. Yeah.
for me, it's like big. What's my favorite thing? Beginning and stop. Clone Wars, the animated series. It's
Yeah.
the richest piece of Star Wars IP
That
there
that's
is.
that's me. I bookend it with Revenge of the Sith just because it takes place during the
I
last season.
love
So
that
to me,
overlap. I
together
love that overlap.
it's one entity. And my dad too. He watched it like 2 years ago. Now he's telling me every time he goes like, I'm rewatching Clone Wars. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah,
I love
you just
that.
got to do. It's like a show I got to watch once a year. I was like, wow, it's a big
Yes.
commitment too. But
Yes, Daddy Body.
yeah,
Yes. I love it.
Papa
It
body.
is a
Yeah.
big it is a Papa Body. Love that. It is a big commitment. And like I always tell people like I would watch it. I would rewatch it because the first 3 seasons are meh. But you watch them for Ahsoka's character development. Because that's really like that's mainly like a top 3 thing for me in Clone Wars is like go and fall in love with Ahsoka. Like you have to watch this show
Uh-huh.
to get her, and then you'll want to watch Rebels and you'll want to watch the
But
Ahsoka
it's
series. And and it's really 4 through 7 where it's just
yeah,
like go off
right.
on like the canon lore. Like you need
It
seasons four
keeps
through seven.
exploding, like, when Maul goes to Mandalore, it just keeps it's like watching what it's like watching? Like a nuclear explosion, and just you see the
And just
mushroom
like
cloud just go up, and I'm like, "Oh my god."
and it all just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and
Yeah.
like you know what's coming. And so you see where all of this
Mhm.
conflict and all these issues are running towards
That's how you
at like
storytell, even
so
knowing
good.
because there's still suspense even knowing the end point, you know?
Right?
Mhm.
Right, the fact that I think it's such a unique story in that, like, you know where you start and you know where you finish, but, like, making stops along the way, and we're going backwards, then we're jumping forwards, then we're going backwards again, and, like, the fact that it can still keep my attention where it's like, I just need to know where we are in the timeline, and I'm good.
And it's
Like,
only 3
because
years really, which is helpful.
you're still filling in those blanks. Like, you're still getting to fill in those blanks, and it's still exciting. And then, of course, like, you have, like, the whole Ahsoka's Gone season, which is still a great season. I love
Season
seeing that
6. That was a
those, like,
potpourri
side
season.
stories,
Mhm.
so you know what?
I
Did I
liked it.
need it? No, but it
I
was
liked it.
great, yeah?
I loved
Yeah,
it
no, it
all.
was great.
Even the early episodes, like which were kind of like the New Jedi Knights comic that's coming out, kind of anthology oriented. Like here's Luminara's episode, here's Quinlan Vose's
Yeah.
episode. I even like the Jar Jar ones where he's just running around with the droids. I think it was like episode 8, and he's just like,
I love the
I'm like,
Jar Jar
I
episodes
like
because he's the hero of those episodes, and I'm
it's
like, "Go
light,
off,
yeah.
Jar Jar."
And it was Ahmed Best too, right? It was
Yeah,
actually his voice, yeah.
yeah, he voiced him. Even the random little droid episodes, I'm like, "These are great. These are all great." And then, of course, we get to the last 4 episodes of the last
Um,
season, and I could cry every time. I
me
know
too.
what's happening. I know what's coming, but I remember binging I easily binged the last season in a week
Those 12 episodes. Mhm.
because I just ate it because it was so good, and then when the text is read and you're like, "No, it's
Yeah,
coming.
I'm like,
It's
no more of
coming.
those. Right? I'm like, it's
Oh,
to
what
me.
happened to the yellow?" Like
To me, when I watch that Revenge of the Sith, it's like such a modern Shakespearean tragedy. I don't think anything's accomplished that level of Greek tragedy to me. You know,
Yeah.
yes, there's other stuff out there, but on an emotional level, like that and like Sopranos, especially the end, seeing the end game, they call that silhouetting when you see the dark, that's what's being
Mhm.
shown, but you see the light behind it because of the contrasts. So
Yeah.
you're in this dark story, but you feel spiritual hope. You feel like, I know Vader will be okay in the end, you know, or I should say Anakin. I know the galaxy will be okay. I know this will have a happy ending,
Right?
but right now things are dark. You got to go through it. That silhouetting I thought was so fantastically captured in the end of the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith.
No, 100%. And the fact that like you already had the Revenge of the Sith story, like you saw that. Like you didn't need to see the fight on Mustafar. You didn't need to see Anakin falling apart and like his relationship with Padme falling apart. And so to follow Ahsoka, who at this point you're in love with, you're like this bitch is badass. Like she's handling everything. Like you want to follow her through. Like what happened to her during Order 66? And God, it doesn't disappoint. And everything with Maul, every second with Maul. Every
Yeah,
fucking second with Maul.
because he was kind of he was just a wrench thrown into everything, unpredictable. It's like, you know, when what do they call that when they have like, you know, A and B, and then you throw in C, and then you throw in D,
A
and he was just
variable?
like, yeah, I guess there's another term in terms of storytelling technique or literary devices, but it's like when you have a gun on the wall. There's the term for this. You have a gun on the wall in a scene, you better use it. There's a term for that. I forget what it's
Yeah.
called. So don't just have it for no reason. Like which Game of Thrones did, and that's kind of what tore it apart towards the end.
Yeah.
But like with Star Wars, there was always like a foreshadowing. Everything really tied together, especially well in those first 6 movies. Like there was a nothing was wasted. Everything
Nothing.
logically followed, and they used prophecy. It was kind of an Old New Testament style.
Yeah.
I liked how they predicted what would happen, and it still surprises you because they said there's 2 reveals. You can watch it chronologically like you did. You find out who's the Sith, you know, Palpatine, spoiled, and you find out
Yeah.
all that stuff. But then you're robbed of the "I am your father" reveal, which happens the other way. So either way, you're getting, you know, if you've avoided the internet, you're getting one of the big surprises.
You know, I do think it's really beautiful. And I think that you're right. It is all there. And that's why I think like Filoni and his team do such a good job at the retconning because like it is there. Like the story is there, the lore is there. Like they don't just pull things out of their asses. Like it's all there. And when you connect these puzzle pieces and they just make it make sense in this really beautiful way, and then you just get these like unknown puzzle pieces that make it like even better. Like Bad Batch, dude, Bad Batch was just a treat. It
Oh
was
yeah.
just an absolute treat. It was so good and so just in line like it did such a good like I think nothing did a better job of retconning a lot of what happened with Palpatine in the sequel trilogy movies better than Bad Batch.
Yes, and I like how they brought Camino into it. A big part with the cloning. I thought it was more Clone Wars, but in an Imperial era in a way,
Right,
which I
right.
really appreciate. And I liked how it started off too. And you can with and there's also Kanan too. I'm getting into the video games a little bit in the comics as well, but
Do it all.
I just love how it all like you could see one piece over here, and it's complemented with another Star Wars media, I guess, or
Yeah,
installment.
yeah.
For instance, Kanan, you see his master's death on screen and in the comics, the Kanan comics. And then in the Battle of Jakku, of course, you see the ship in Episode 7, the
Hmm.
destroyer. You see it in the video game. I think it's what Battlefront 2, and now in the comics, they just showed how that ship goes down. So I'm like, you see different angles of the war, of the story, and it's all one diamond. You know, many different facets. So that's what's great.
Yeah.
At least now, people had problems with Kathleen Kennedy. I get it because from 15 to 19, she didn't really storyboard a lot of stuff. But
Hmm.
since then, since 2020 onward, Disney's got its act together in terms of um, making all the pieces fit. The Charlie thing, you know, the Charlie Day where everything is
Yeah.
coming together. But they've learned and they've done better since. So it was a
Yeah.
stutter step.
Yeah. I also think I really love the selection like since like post sequel trilogies, I really love the selection of directors.
Yeah,
Like I think everybody directing Star Wars content is such a fan
they get it.
and like so committed to like keeping the storyline and keeping that flavor while always like putting their own like taste on things, which I think is nice about what we get in the Mandalorian is and they like really make a point of like advertising this. It's like these are all different directors on these episodes. Like we're all coming together in this collaborative experience while still like having this cohesive storyline. And I think they're just doing a really nice fucking job at it.
Talent is talent. If you organize it correctly, you know, people get creative and they're able to handle things even with stresses. Well, if you asked me 30 years ago if the director of Swingers would be directing Star Wars, you know, John Favreau, I'd be like, no. If you asked me 20 years ago, would the director of Iron Man be doing it? I'd be like, maybe. Would if I knew Marvel and Star
Right?
Wars would be together, I'd be like, sorry, Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, all that. I'd be like, I guess it makes sense from a
Right?
corporation's point of view,
Right.
but like,
From a money point of view, sure. Yes.
but the thing is with that, you don't want to. That's why a lot of indie comics lines, like with what's his name, McPartlin too, and Spawn. They did those indie imprints and publishers because they didn't want the mega corporations
Yeah.
to squash out the art, which is always a threat, and you can see that some cases that will always be there. But if you have enough of a talent pool, you can get creative enough within those guidelines. I think the thing with Star Wars is there's an expected guideline. You're not going to see them just start cursing, say bullshit, all that,
Right.
strippers. You're not going to see that. It'll be
Right?
alluded to, but it doesn't go
Exactly.
that
Like
edgy.
we'll have a little innuendo, but nobody's fucking in Star
It's
Wars.
it's still it's still a family
And it's
franchise.
still right, it's still for kids.
It's still
Like it's
innocuous. Yeah, it's
yeah,
innocuous.
there's things that'll never get covered, but like one of my favorite things that gets brought up is sexy Star Wars. Cuz
Mhm.
you have like things like Leia in the fucking slave bikini and it's like, okay,
That was the
hey
'80s.
guys. Yeah, like all right, you guys everybody had that poster in their room, like you're all jacking off to that. And then of course now we have modern day with the Acolyte and Manny Jacinto who can just do anything he
Yeah.
wants.
You tell me, who is the sex symbol of Star Wars today? Like, if there's one, is it Ewan McGregor still? Is it Hayden Christensen? Or they're kinda old now? Who's
I
the
don't know if it's Hayden Christensen anymore. I mean, Ewan McGregor will always just be, like, so handsome.
Right.
I mean, I'm putting Manny Jacinto in top 3 from that,
Oh,
like,
okay.
water episode, that water scene, like, woo. I'm just a woman, James. I'm just
Hey,
a
it's a
woman.
I feel like a
Him and all his
woman.
him and all his dark side energy. I was like, "God damn." I watched that episode a lot. Like,
If I were to if I
who
were to
else
say
is
one, I can't because my girlfriend would kill me, so I passed that test.
There
She
you
is,
go.
and she has to be cast in Star Wars. She's the
There you
sex symbol.
go.
If you're
There you
listening,
go. Right,
um,
Prince is the sex symbol of my Star
there we
Wars.
go.
There you go. Those are the right answers.
Yep, the right answer.
We are not in trouble. I mean, you know what it is? I think they also do a thing of like they look at the characters, but they'll also look at like the actors and actresses. So like you look at
Natalie Portman even
yeah,
at the time.
yeah, like Natalie Portman, you look at Daisy Ridley and she's gorgeous. She's
Mhm.
beautiful. Like you look at the actress who Ewan McGregor is married to that played Hera in
Yeah, I
the
forgot
Ahsoka
about her.
series.
Uh-huh.
And like literally the amount of innuendo just about her ass in those pants from the series is very funny. There's a whole thing about it on the internet. Is people just being like
Obi-Wan
they
or Obi-2?
designed those pants on purpose.
Hey, the
um,
conjugal breaks, while filming,
right?
but,
There's so few of those like really like direct moments of this is like let's like over sexualize this that I think it's such a small handful of them in Star Wars. I think you have the Leia Slave bikini. I think you have Chimere coming and naked out the pool. It's just suggestive. And except in Andor, this is the only time somebody had sex in Star Wars was in Andor when what's her name? The one
yes,
who
that
Andor is in
was
love
in
with.
season 1.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
she like is like after her and her like narc boyfriend like obviously have sex and it's like I think the only instance of somebody like properly alluding to we just had sex in Star Wars.
Ryan Reynolds took that to the bank with Disney. He was like, "See what they did? I can curse in this fucking movie." They're like, "Alright, no cocaine." You
I
know?
don't know. I'm so interested with how Disney Plus works with that. Where I'm like, this is still a children's platform, but you can have an R-rated movie, and you have that other movie that
Honestly,
Amy Adams just did called Night Bitch, which is supposed to be like a cheeky
right,
premise, but
cheeky.
I'm just like, huh,
You know what it
fascinating.
is? Honestly,
Like,
streamers at this point are just like, "Just please don't cancel your subscription. We don't we'll bend the
put
rules,
whatever you
please."
want. We'll put
Right.
whatever you want.
I'll always
Like,
keep a Disney. My it's one of the few apps that works in Mexico. I will attest to that. For me, when because
okay.
my girlfriend's Mexican, when I went over there, I can only use Netflix, Prime, Max, and Disney. Nothing else works. So thank
Mm,
God at least Disney's international, so that
there you
helps.
go. There you go. Well, you know what? I think it's interesting, and we can leave it on this. Is that I remember when I would have to travel to the Middle East for work. Like Middle Eastern television is very interesting because like there's nothing sexy. Like you can't show
Mhm.
anything like sexy or
Nothing.
vulgar or stuff like that. But as far as, like, language, like, what we would consider, like, things that the FCC would block, like saying "fuck" or saying shit, like, you can say whatever you want
Mhm,
on Middle Eastern TV. There's no censoring of language. There's just censoring of, like, bodily vulgarity.
mhm.
And so, it always just makes me think now of just, like, does Disney not care if we say "fuck" anymore? Like, is that
That's
on the table?
well, you know what? It was a slippery slope once they put the beds together in, like, Bewitched and all that stuff, or,
Right?
I Love Lucy. Once they're sleeping in one bed, I knew this was gonna happen. I knew it would just be
Alright? I
degradation of
know
all culture.
I know how Little Ricky got made. I know
Right.
how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That went
Pop out
down.
of a drum. Yeah, they went into a drum together, yeah,
And then she said, "Ugh."
well, it's a very sad story. They did get divorced and all that. The Lucy movie is actually worth watching. No, you wouldn't think we're plugging
Yeah,
out on the Mind the Force, but
yeah.
it's an
Oh,
interesting,
Lucy movie is good, I've seen that
yeah,
movie. The one
with,
was it the one with Nicole
Kidman
Kidman?
and,
Oh, that movie was so
Alfred
good.
Molina, yeah, mhm.
I think so. That movie was excellent. That was very good.
Or not Javier Bardem. No, it was Alfred Molina,
No, I
yeah.
think it was no, I think it was Javier Bardem, I think.
You tell us, fans.
Right. Who was in that movie with Nicole Kidman? You guys let us know,
We're making
'cause
sure you stay till the end, yeah.
we can't Google it or anything. We can't do that. Um, but, I mean, do you have any final thoughts on your love of Star Wars and what we do here at Mind the Force, James, before we
Just
let
keep
our good friends go?
Just keep it coming, keep supporting us, spread the word, drop any ideas. We're always willing to explore questions and answer questions and other concepts that we may not have thought of. We are, it's all in dialogue, so we would love to just keep this going and make it, a personal interaction with the fans as well. We're all here to discuss what makes Star Wars so great. So as long as the content keeps coming out, even if it didn't, we would still have enough material to discuss for decades to come. So hopefully that's the case.
Exactly. Our premise is not relying on current content coming out. We can talk forever and ever and ever and
There's
ever.
Legends, yep, there's Legends universe, mhm.
Right? There's no shortage of stuff that we can talk about. I feel so privileged to get to do this and to get to think outside the box and think about these bigger themes and these larger questions and what that really can just mean for how we look at everything in the world. Like you can just like we did today, you can just connect it to so many things. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful about any storytelling, but for Star Wars to have come into my life the way that it did and strike the chord that it did, I'm just thankful. I'm
It's like a
just thankful.
lightsaber through the heart, me too, yeah. I'm so
Right,
happy that
right through the fucking spinal cortex. Like,
I'm so happy we were born on this planet at this time to know what Star Wars is, right? We could have been born in
right?
another galaxy, long time ago, far, far away, or is it long yeah, a long
Right
time
in the
ago, far, far away, yeah.
right in the futuristic past or however the fuck it
Uh,
works.
quick quick aside, have you listened I'm sure maybe the fans have heard. This was when I was 9, Weird Al Yankovic did the Star Wars song. It's like a long, long time ago. He does like Don
I've
McLean.
definitely heard that.
I love that song.
There's an entire amazing, like, spoof album
Yeah, yeah,
that
yep, mhm.
that this artist did. It wasn't Weird Al Yankovic, it was somebody else, but I went
Uh,
to
Star Wars, yeah.
I think yeah, I think and you probably know who I'm talking about. I went with a friend to, a burlesque show in New York City, that they have every year that honors the, holiday special, and, oh my god, it was such a good
What
time,
a combo.
and the music they kept playing was from this artist that did all these spoof songs off of, like, modern, like, popular songs, but they were all Star Wars themed, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this? This is great."
Right into the vein, give it to me.
Oh my god, it was perfect. It was perfect. I will make sure to drop the artist name in the show notes cuz it was inspired. It was like an immediate like need to find this on Spotify. Um and I just love that. I mean, I love that it can touch anything, anywhere, anyone, anytime across age groups and cultures,
It's in the popular lexicon, yeah.
right? It's a part of the zeitgeist at all
Mhm.
times. And I'm fucking here for it.
Me too, yeah, every step of the way. So thank you, Christine. I appreciate you putting this all together.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on this ride with me, James. And
Anytime.
I think to wrap it on up, as we will always reiterate, please follow us on all the socials on mindtheforce.com and Facebook and Instagram. Drop us all your big Star Wars thoughts and feels at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com. Please listen to us on all the socials. Um, Please listen to us on all the streaming platforms. That's what I meant. This is what happens when you don't read things. I'm just riffing it, fucking it up.
Well, you can listen to us on the social media and then to find us on
You
the
can.
streaming.
You can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of your favorite podcast streamers. You could even listen to it on mindtheforce.com. I did that for my mom, so it wouldn't be complex. Um, Either way, drop us 5 stars. Let us know what you think. Hit us with the questions, the love, the smoke. We're here for all of it. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Mind the Force. I wish you all a very happy Star Wars podcast day. And we'll see you next time. And stay mindful.
May the Force be with you all.